Everyone, so it's me, Melanie, Mauricio, and Ventura. So for today, I will be helping you to study or to understand another topic in creative writing, which is particularly more on poetry, the elements of poetry, poetry techniques, and of course, literary devices used in poetry. Because in this video, our focus will be on the following most essential learning competency. We have identify various elements, techniques, and literary devices in specific forms of poetry. So are you now excited for this session? I hope so. So this time, let us try to define first what is poetry. So when we say poetry, we are referring to a form of literary expression that captures intense experiences or creative perceptions of the world in a musical language. Bottom line, when we say poetry, we are referring to a literary piece that expresses emotions or experiences of a poet or of a writer, which is written in a musical language. When we say musical language, it employs creativity of language, which may include the use of different literary devices or sound devices, which we shall be discussing also in this session. Alright, so this time it's not enough for us to just define poetry. Because when we are talking about poetry, then we cannot get away from discussing also about prose. Because prose is another division of literature. Okay, so how do we differentiate poetry then from that of a prose? So poetry is formatted differently from prose. So they have different format. Okay, in poetry, we are using lines and stanzas, while in prose, we are using sentences and paragraphs. So when I say line, line can be a word or row of words that may or may not form a complete sentence. Unlike in prose, we are using sentences. Okay, and those group of sentences may form a stanza, like when we are making our essays. All right, but in poetry, group of lines or when we combine lines, we may form this what we call a stanza. And to separate every stanza from one another, we are using a space, just like this example. Okay, now let's now discuss the different elements of poetry. So actually there are many elements, but this time we'll be focusing on the essential ones, or the essential elements in poetry. Of course, just like any other literary pieces, we have the theme. Theme is actually referring to the message of a story or the message that we can get from a specific literary piece or from a poem. That is theme. And then we also have the tone. So in other references, we can see or we can find there that tone and mood are somewhat synonymous. However, these two are really different from one another because when we say tone, we are referring to the attitude of the poet towards the audience or towards the readers. So we can filter if the poet or the writer is somewhat distant from the readers or humorous or formal. That's the tone. But when we say mood, we are referring to the attitude of the author or of the poet towards the subject matter or towards the topic or the focus of his or her poem. Okay, so again, when we say tone, we are referring to the attitude of the author towards the readers. How do the author or how does the author feel towards the readers or towards target audience? But when we say mood, we are referring to the attitude of the author or writer towards the subject matter of his or her poem. And in identifying the mood, we have to focus on the words or phrases used by the author, because those words and phrases will help us identify, okay, the mood or the feeling that is created while we are reading a specific literary piece. So when we say mood, it is the atmosphere or the emotion in the poem created by the poet through the use of course, words and phrases. So how to do that? How to identify the mood? So for example, in this one, in the morning, very early, okay, that's the time I like to go. Barefoot where the fern grows curly and grass is cool between each toe. On a summer morning, oh, on a summer morning. And then the next stanza, that is when the birds go by up the sunny slopes of air, and each rose has a butterfly or a golden bee to wear. And I am glad in every toe, such a summer morning, oh, such a summer morning. So while reading this poem, or while hearing the poem that I just read, what did you feel? All right. So I guess you got it correctly. So this poem shows an example of a literary piece that has a happy mood. Okay, then what helps us identify the mood? Okay, let's take a look with the lines, okay, that helps us tell that this one has a happy mood. So we have this one. That's the time I love to go. So loving what you do, that may signify happiness. And we also have this one, I am glad in every toe. And even other descriptions such as grass is cool between each toe, up the sunny slopes of air. So all those descriptions represent or signify happiness in the story, which also help us identify that the mood of this poem or of this literary piece is happy. So the author or the writer was able to create a happy mood through the words and phrases that she used, okay, in the poem Barefoot Days. Okay, so that is about mood. Another example, so we have the poem Mad Song. Okay, so by simply reading this line or this uh, poem, so we have I shut my door to keep you out. Won't do no good to stand and shout. Won't listen to a thing you say. Just time you took yourself away. I lock my door to keep me here until I'm sure you disappear. Okay, so upon reading it, what did you feel? Or upon listening to it, what did you feel? Of course, it's not happiness at all. It's the opposite. So, the mood in this poem is obviously angry, mad. Okay, so it can really be created through the use of proper description, which depicts, okay, madness. All right, so that is mood. Another one, we have this one. I love my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I loved my friend. So have you experienced this one? So I know some of you can relate to this poem. Okay, but generally when you hear or when you love those lines, what can you feel? Of course, you will feel sad because you love your friend, but then the friend that you love went away from you. Okay, so just by reading the first two lines, you can immediately identify the mood of this poem. So that is mood. It's all about the emotion that you can feel, okay, upon reading the poem. The emotion created by the author in the poem. That's mood. Please don't forget that. Okay? So let's have a recap again. When we say theme, we are referring to the message that we can get from a specific literary piece or from the poem, from a poem. When we say tone, we are referring to the attitude of the author towards the readers or towards the audience. When we say mood, we are referring to the attitude or emotions created by the poet, okay, in the poem, or the attitude of the poet towards the subject matter or towards the literary piece. Okay, so now let's have the fourth essential element. We have persona. So persona refers to the speaking voice of the poem. So when we say persona, it is related to the perspective or point of view used in a specific literary piece. So don't be confused here. Persona, when we say persona, it is not always the same with the author. Okay? How's that? It is possible that the persona or the speaking voice of the poem is also the author when the point of view used is in the first person point of view, just like in this example, who has seen the wind, neither I nor you. But when the leaves hang trembling, the wind is passing through. So in this example, the first person point of view was used, which signifies that the voice is the poet as the speaker, or the persona or the one who's speaking in this poem is the author herself. However, it is also possible that, say for example, the author is a girl or a female one. She can also create as a poem in a perspective of a guy or of a boy. In that case, the persona could be a boy, even if the author is a girl. So please don't get confused. The poet or the writer is the one who wrote the poem, but it's not necessarily that the poet is also the speaking voice or the persona in the poem. So it depends on the perspective or the point of view used in the poem. Okay? So that is the fourth elements. Okay, so we also have other elements of poetry, such as the rhythm, okay, sound, which include different sound devices, imagery, and then forms. But we shall be discussing all those other elements in the next video.